from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo.
Welcome to the CoCo Crew Podcast. A delicious adventure into the world of retro computing news and information. Featuring the Tandy Color Computer.
Hey, you got your CoCo 3 yet?
CoCo.
All right. CoCo Cruisers, welcome to episode 58 of the CoCo Crew Podcast. Yay!
Woohoo!
CoCo. Whoever thought we would make it? This is, of course, episode 58 being officially our 59th episode since Neil and I cheekily started with episode 0.
That's right.
This is the last episode of our 5th year. Wow, amazing. Did you think we'd make it 5 years, Neil?
You know what? I had a good feeling.
Oh, did you? Cool.
Funny.
Well, anyway, so here I am. I'm John Linville, of course, being joined by Mr. Neil Blanchard. Hello, Neil.
Hello, everyone.
Friend of the show. We're more than friends now. Mike Rowan. Hello, Mike.
Hello. Social distancing.
And, of course, our CoCo historian, and we'll even name him our show historian if he wants to be, Mr. Boise Pete. Hello, Boise.
Hello, glad to take that title.
And unfortunately, still missing Ron Klein. We're hoping he'll come back to us soon, but alas, not yet today. Of course, we're now basically at the end of March. We were looking forward to CoCo Fest coming up, almost a month away. I was going to say CoCo Fest is a month away, but now it's, of course, was a month away because it has been postponed without a date. So postponed indefinitely. We're not sure what's going to happen with CoCo Fest. I'll be honest, judging from the last Glenside meeting, I wouldn't be packing bags for CoCo Fest just yet. Not looking real good at the moment. To be honest, the planning wasn't actually going all that well anyway, so this may actually be saving us from a huge embarrassment. Am I allowed to say that?
Yes.
The good news, of course, is Tandy Assembly is still coming. Well, so it says 7 months away. That'd be what, 10? Yeah, that's about right. 7 months away.
Yep.
And coming up in Tandy Assembly, starting to dig in for some speakers, get some speakers arranged or whatever. So that's looking good. Might be the best Tandy Assembly ever. Best Tandy Assembly for CoCo ever. It's going to be a lot better for CoCo at Tandy Assembly than it is going to be in Elk Grove in a month. Let's put it that way.
Hey, it's the 40th anniversary.
Yeah, 40th anniversary. Somebody can. Hopefully, they make cakes in Ohio.
That's
we
right.
might be able to find them. So, who's got a project? Anyone running anything? Do anything fun?
I am.
What's that?
I'm working on a multi-CoCo, if you want to call it a parallel CoCo project, where I have multiple CoCos connected together, doing some interesting things.
That's cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah, that's very cool.
I was going to show it off at the CoCo Fest, but obviously that's not going to happen next month. So anyway, I'm refining it, working on it, and I'll probably post a YouTube video of it at some point.
Nice.
Coming up, a
Cluster.
very special episode of the CoCo Collector.
Yes. Special episode. Yep, that's the plan.
I was assembling cartridge packages, hoping to have a few for sale on the table at CoCo Fest. There's a section of the community that truly seems to believe that nobody buys cartridges, and they're really, really wrong. Let me put it that way. But, what can you say? Crikey, they'll be surprised. Beyond that, I was planning to try to revitalize a few things for my CoCo Fest table, projects that had been done in the past or technical demos or whatever you might want to call them. I was going to try to fluff up, knock the dust off, and that sort of thing. But, the urgency for those has evaporated, so I'm not sure what's going to happen with them, whether I'll continue with that plan or get distracted by Tandy Assembly or when and if there is a next CoCo Fest. Anyone else? Who else is working on some stuff?
Well, I'm still working on the CoCo Arcade joystick with the wood.
Oh,
base.
yeah? How's that going? You in full production yet, or?
Yep, getting there. Yeah, we got the last prototype made, and we're very happy with it. So we're going to go into production very, very soon.
Cool.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of cool.
Yeah.
And offer different types of wood too. If you want exotic wood, the base models are going to be pine.
Yeah.
We'll work with that. And
I want teak. Can I get teak like a sailboat?
Not teak would be nice. I want mine from diamond.
How about petrified mammoth dung?
There you go.
Given the situation, I'm sure any of us who had projects are probably quite distracted from them at the moment. Maybe we'll move on. Anybody buy anything off of eBay recently? Anything cool?
Yeah, I picked up a GoTech and a couple other pieces and parts for it, but I haven't had time to assemble it yet, but to use that with the CoCo.
Yeah, I'm seeing some of those lately in more than one place, people playing with those. I don't think it's necessarily going to be the smoothest option compared to, say, the CoCo STC, but I think it's got a lot of the same potential advantages. It might be something that we could, as a community, work on and produce something that might be just as nice. I'd like to see it continue. We'll see where we can find out. I haven't bought one yet, though, so let's see. Looking at my own eBay purchases, and they fell off a cliff. I'm not sure what happened, but I did have them coming in about every 3 days, and then all of a sudden I stopped. I don't know what happened there. I did find what appeared to be an color inkjet cartridge that will fit the
CGP 220?
Yeah, the 220.
That's right, the CGP 220. It's actually made for the Canon equivalent. Anyway, I have the cartridge. It's only the color one, though, so I don't have a black one, and those are not any easier to find. So maybe if I ever find a black one, I could dig out the CGP 220 and actually see print like it's 1992 or something, or 91.
awesome.
That might be fun.
I've been trying to track that down for years.
Yeah. Well, and I would have never bothered to try to find the black one. I would have thought the color one would be the hard one to find, but
Yeah.
apparently not.
Huh.
I think I found a place in the UK where looks like you could have ordered one, but the website looks like it hasn't been updated since this decade. So
No doubt.
I guess that's going to have to do for an intro. Why don't we take a little break, and we'll come back with some announcements.
Meet Dr. Bjorn Vittore, one of 3,300 scientists who work on ATLAS, analyzing data from the Large Hadron Collider.
We are truly on the brink of discovering the elusive God particle, the particle that gives all other particles mass.
When Dr. Vittore needs to crunch numbers quickly, there's only one tool he turns to.
I first encountered Dynacalcs when I was at Fermilab in 1984. Our primary field was a Hazelwood Helix running OS9. It looked like a giant power supply with a small 6809 bolt attached. But the operating system was way ahead of its time, very powerful. We were provided load versus displacement data and used the Dynacalc to determine hysteresis at different positions of coil actuators. Dynacalc handles the calculations where the previous Apple II running VisiCalc simply lacked memory to complete the task.
Dynacalc is easy to use, easy to afford, yet sophisticated enough to meet the most demanding requirements.
I still keep a CoCo 3 in my office with Dynacalc, just a press of the clear key away. It's an invaluable tool that allows me to enter data and equations quickly.
Whether you're performing basic accounting, solving engineering problems, or even searching for the Higgs boson, Dynacalc is up to the task.
Dynacalc allows me to perform complex work in a straightforward manner. I wouldn't use any other spreadsheet.
Powerful, simple, Dynacalc.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back. Now it's time for some announcements. You are, of course, listening to the CoCo Crew Podcast. That's well, the way we like to say it, we don't like to be called the CCCP because it, we're not commies like some people want to accuse, which is blatantly crazy.
Political
Sorry,
distancing.
Anyway, you are listening to the CoCo Crew Podcast. We are available on Twitter as at CoCo Crew Podcast. That's at CoCoCrewPodcast. If you are the kind of person who likes to sit on Twitter and tweet, then feel free to tweet at us, and we may actually tweet back, if we see it. We, of course, are available on Facebook. We have a page called The CoCo Crew Podcast. That's 4 separate words. So if you're on the Book of Faces, please come and check us out to join the group. And you get news about the show or sometimes news about the CoCo a little bit earlier. And, show your support. Love to have you. And it's a great way to give us feedback. All right, so we are, of course, a podcast, an audio podcast. We are available through Apple Podcasts, Google Play, as normal downloads for podcasts with a normal podcatcher. And, of course, we're available for streaming on the Internet through Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. And so however you'd like to get your audio on the Internet, I think we'll be able to accommodate you. If you somehow can't get us the way you want us, then send us an email. How did you get us to hear this, I guess? But send us an email and we'll try to figure out something to play. For some time, we've been taking our audio episodes and running them through a mechanical conversion, turning them into, videos that we upload to YouTube. So we are available on YouTube as video episodes, and calling them videos a little generous, especially the audio episode with a static background or almost static background. But we are available, and YouTube does a pretty good job of adding subtitles. So if you are someone for whom English is not a first language, then this may be a helpful way to follow the show. At least that's what we hear. So check us out on YouTube. CoCo Crew Podcast is a member of the Throwback Network. This is a collection of retro-themed podcasts. If you're caught up on the CoCo Crew Podcast and you're looking for other listening options, then we recommend that you check out the Throwback Network. Also, we're available on the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub. This is also a list of retro-themed podcasts. In this case, the common denominator is, old school gaming, console gaming, old computers. And again, if we are caught up on CoCo Crew episodes and looking for something else to listen to, then we recommend that you check out the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub. Audio for the CoCo Crew Podcast is hosted by Cyber Ears. If you have a need to host audio on the internet, whether it be for your church, your club, your own podcast, or just to record messages for your kids or whatever, then we recommend that you check out Cyber Ears, where you will get your audio on your terms. Now, if you want to do things the new old-fashioned way and communicate via email, we do have some addresses available for you to reach out to the CoCo Crew. We have 3 addresses that will reach all of the hosts. Of course, show, SHOW, at CoCoCrew.org. That's at CoCoCrew.org. We also have podcast, PODCAST, at CoCoCrew.org. And feedback, FEEDBACK, at CoCoCrew.org. Again, each of those addresses will reach all of our hosts. So if you have feedback or an idea or a complaint or whatever, feel free to use one of those addresses. If you want to reach just one of our hosts for some reason, whatever that reason may be, then we are all each available with our own address. I, of course, am John, JOHN, at CoCoCrew.org. Neil is available as Neil, Neil. Mike is available as Mike, Mike. Boise, of course, is Boise, Boisy. And Ron, of course, is Ron, RON, the hardest one to spell, at CoCoCrew.org. So those are our normal announcements. Now, we did have a running event called the CoCo Fest Challenge. This was sort of inspired by the Retro Challenge events where people could name their own projects and work on them and document them up to a couple of weeks before CoCo Fest. We were giving away we're inviting the winners to come and have dinner with us at CoCo Fest. Given all the change of plans, shall we say, just a little too confusing and a little too awkward to arrange that. At this point, we don't even know when CoCo Fest would be, so we can't even be sure we'll all be there. So I took the liberty of canceling that event. I have requested shipping addresses from the active participants and with the intent to send them consolation prize. Heard from one who didn't seem too interested in getting a consolation prize. Heard from another who was. Still waiting to hear from the third. Anyway, hopefully they'll all walk away satisfied, if not declared the winner. But we do what we can in times like these. So moving on to our list of in real life events. Unfortunately, it's a little bit sad at the beginning here. So the first event that was scheduled for April 3rd to 5th was the Midwest Gaming Classic. That now is showing as canceled. So if you're planning to go to Midwest Gaming Classic, well, good news, you've got a free weekend. Also, of course, as we already mentioned, the 29th annual last Chicago CoCo Fest was scheduled April 18th and 19th of 2020. It is now postponed without a date. So we don't know when it's going to happen. If it'll happen this year or not remains to be seen. I'm sure once we find out, we'll let you know.
April's looking suddenly pretty open.
Yeah, April's looking really open.
All those lost weekends we've regained.
And all those big outdoor parties and such we can have, right?
Right.
It was jam-packed.
So moving on to the next event was the Vintage Computer Festival East in Wall, New Jersey, scheduled April 24th through 26th of 2020. That event also postponed. They do have a date. The dates will be October 10th through 12th of 2020. They have a facility kind of not quite dedicated, at least certainly available to them, and a lot easier to change it to reschedule when you have the facility already in hand.
We have to keep going with a positive spin here, so don't look at it as freeing up your April. You're super concentrating your retro computing into the fall.
Well, at least to July. So in July, if you can make it to the UK, or if you're in the UK, if you're a Dragon person, it's still showing the Center for Computing History that Dragon Meetup will happen the 4th and 5th of July. Yep, Dragon Meetup still on their list for July 4th of 2020. If you are UK, if you're in the UK or available to the UK, not under a travel ban or other restrictions, and you can make it out there, then you might can still make it to the Dragon Meetup at the Center for Computing History in Cambridge, UK, July 4th, 5th of 2020. It may only just be July 4th, to be honest. I'm not sure. Anyway, so there, a little piece of good news. Following on to that, staying in the United States, coming up July 10th through 12th, Vintage Computer Festival Southeast, number 8.0, being held at Marriott Renaissance Waverly in Atlanta, Georgia, co-locating with the Southern Fried Gaming Expo. So it should be a big, fun event. I may have to clear my schedule for this one. So there's some good news. All right, continuing the not canceled, making some arrangements just in case. Coming up scheduled for July 21st through 26th of 2020, of course, is Kansas Fest. That's the Apple II Summer Camp at Rockhurst University in Kansas City, Missouri. They have taken one precaution. Their scheduling opens up and then they fill pretty quickly and usually a bit early. In this case, in consideration of people not being sure about how they can plan or whatever, the Kansas Fest powers that be have delayed registration, so it will not start until April 30th of 2020. So if you want to go to Kansas Fest, you still got about a month before you'll even be able to register. Good stuff. You may actually still have the event. Coming up in August 14th through 16th of 2020, on the West Coast, the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. This will be held at the Oregon Convention Center in Portland, Oregon. Everything I hear about this event is good. Lots of gaming folks Probably a little, like you said, heavier on the gaming than, say, the old computers. But still, lots of cool stuff to see, lots of retro gear, lots of gaming stuff, lots of arcade stuff. Could be a lot of fun. If you are in or near the Pacific Northwest come August, then I recommend that you make it to the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, August 14th through 16th of 2020. And of course, last but not least, now looking like it will be the undisputed premier event in the Tandy World this year.
All the trumpets.
Scheduled for October 30th through November 1st. So that's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, including the technical seminar day on Friday. We are talking about Tandy Assembly. This will be located in Springfield, Ohio. Will be the best place in the country, in the world, to see some old Tandy gear that weekend. Very cool stuff. Nice little town. Lots of friendly folks.
Good
Some of the best technical people in the Tandy world. All right. Make your plans now. Make it out to Springfield, Ohio for Halloween weekend. A good time will be had by all.
Home of the Simpsons.
Alleged home of the Simpsons. All right. Well, all right. That's the end of our announcements. So why don't we take another little break? We'll be back.
I've run my small business on a CoCo for years. I love my 6809, but I need to expand.
Then you need the new TC9 Tomcat from Frank Hogg Laboratory.
The Tomcat? What's that?
The Tomcat is a major improvement over the CoCo 3. The TC9 picks up where Tandy left off. It allows you to upgrade from your color computer without throwing anything away.
Is it faster?
The TC9 6809 processor is 25% faster, and you can expand by adding a 68,000 or 68,030 CPU to double or triple performance.
Can I connect a modern printer?
The TC9 features an industry-standard parallel printer port.
What about memory?
You can place 512K of memory on the TC9 motherboard, or even use your CoCo 3's 512K memory expansion board in the TC9. The Disto 1 megabyte expansion for the CoCo simply plugs in without any soldering. Later, you can expand the Tomcat with the K-Bus and add up to 14 megabytes of RAM.
What about serial ports?
The Tomcat has 2 real serial ports. Connect modems, terminals, printers, and even a serial mouse.
How about cartridges?
The TC9 has a standard CoCo bus, so CoCo cartridge packs can be used.
What kind of keyboard?
The TC9 uses a PC-compatible keyboard.
Wow! Sounds like the TC9 was made for me.
If you currently own a CoCo 3 and use both RS-DOS and OS9, the TC9 Tomcat is your road to the future. Create a CoCo 3 compatible system and then expand at your own pace at low cost. The TC9 Tomcat, only from Frank Hogg Laboratory.
User-friendly service since 1976.
All right. Welcome back for the news. Let's see. Our first item we're going to talk about today, we've got a project by Scott Kelly. A lot of people have had some problems with the CoCo Deluxe joysticks. There's some pretty elaborate plastic armature work inside them, especially since you can flip the little things on the bottom to lock them versus to enable the centering and stuff. And so sometimes they tend to break. And they're not just on the shelves anymore. So apparently Mr. Kelly here has gone off and designed replacement armatures. They're available got 2 links here. One's for the shorter arm and one for the longer arm. Together they comprise what's called the gimbal, which is the kind of the rotating pieces that when you move the joystick, it turns the potentiometers inside the joystick. So if you have a broken or damaged deluxe joystick or other craft joystick, I imagine they're using the same parts, this may be your key to fixing them. So very cool. Have not tried them. I'm not big on 3D printing. No, it helps a lot of people. A lot of people really like it. It's definitely good to have people designing these parts, but I personally can't attest, but they do look good. So very cool, Scott. Thank you. What do you guys think?
Definitely good to have parts like this available.
Oh, for
Definitely.
sure.
Cool. All right, and then a somewhat related post. And this comes from Robert Allen Murphy, who we've heard from on the show before. And I've heard him say elsewhere that one of his big intros into the color computer community was through the CoCopedia, which is basically a wiki that was started by Alan Huffman, and has some information, some CoCo-related information out there for, for newbies and for not so newbies. He's taken and added and or expanded this section for the deluxe joystick, part of it based on the prior project that we're talking about. And so, if you're looking for information about the deluxe joystick, like a good place to go. So cool, huh? All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. All right, the next item. This is from Simon Hardy, who's prominent in the Dragon world. Now you can browse the entire archive and click Play Now on supported files to play the game in XRoar Online. So I think, seemed like we touched upon this before. Maybe this is an extension of something that was already in progress last month. But basically, it's a way to access Dragon software, play it online using a version of XRoar running on the web. Cool stuff, especially if you are a Dragon aficionado, or in many cases it's basically the same games, just with slight internal differences for machine differences. So if you're looking, if there's a game there that you're not familiar with on the CoCo, but maybe it exists there and you want to see what it's like, a good way to check it out is play it on the Dragon.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've checked this out, and it also bridges the gap for people wanting to play some of the software on their phones, because there is no emulator for the smartphones that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
As of yet, so it's kind of cool. It does work pretty well.
It's nice. It also is a good way to get a flavor for the game in a hurry.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you, Mr. Simon. Okay, moving on. We have a YouTube video. I'm not sure who this is from. The YouTube alias or whatever is Dragon Data Archives. I'm not sure who's the person behind that. But it's they've got a Dragon 32, and they've diagnosing and repairing a RAM fault in the upper 16K of RAM on a Dragon 32 Mark II board. And so it's kind of a technical video. May not directly help you with your CoCo, but it might not indirectly, and it might be interesting. It might help indirectly, and it might be interesting anyway. So check it out. What do you think?
Yeah, cool video.
Yep.
Yeah, it was neat.
Very cool. Okay, let's see. Where are we? Oh, yes. Mr. Jim Gary. Secret of Flagstone Manor Adventure. The Secret of Flagstone Manor by Brian Betts of Mountain Valley Software. Reportedly Australia's first text adventure. For more info, see, and he's got a link probably to a blog. There'll be some more information if you want to learn more. And either way, it's it's a software for for your MC10, but probably could be on your CoCo. No matter how bad you want to work at it, or how much you want to beg Jim to convert it. Very cool. Good job, Jim, as always. Oh yeah, this is an interesting one. This is from Gerardus 1970 at YouTube. I don't know Gerardus's name either. I should, but I don't. Gerardus, who are you? Anyway, someone with some prominence. I've seen the alias there quite a bit in the MC10 world. I just don't have the proper name to put with it. Anyway, one of the things you may have heard people complain about the MC10 is that they didn't hook up all the memory correctly, so that the biggest effect being that you can't use the highest resolution modes of the VDG on the MC10, even with the memory expansion in place. But it turns out there's at least one modification out there that's documented that you can do that essentially adds and hooks up that extra memory so that you can do higher resolution graphics on your MC10. And if you don't believe us, or don't believe me, or don't believe Gerardus, he's got it on video. So, if you are an aspiring MC10 user or Inquisitor or whatever, you want to go and just check out this video, see what you think. Maybe you'll learn to like the MC10 after all.
Yeah, pretty cool to see that on MC10. Nice, smooth scrolling.
Yep. Cool. First one, well, it's really two items in one. There's a couple of videos. We had this before. There was a Joe's Computer Museum video where they're setting up the timing circuits to produce a video signal from bare chips or whatever. This is an extension of that, and then there's actually a second extension. So, so part 2 and part 3 of generating an NTSC video signal from logic chips. So if that's the kind of thing that interests you, like it might be for me, definitely check it out. Conceptually, video seems like magic and awesomeness and whatever, but at some level, it's really just hooking up some timers and offsetting them from each other properly, using them to reset to each other so that they go in cycles. And this kind of demystifies a lot of that. I recommend you check it out. I think it's a lot of fun. Moving on. Let's see another video from a little-known MC10 author by the name of Jim Gary. Ported the puzzle game Rockhopper from Amstrad CPC 464 Locomotive Basic to TRS-80 Microcolor Basic, and of course is the MC10. Published in Amstrad User Magazine, June 1985. Like I said, it's kind of par for the course for Jim Gary. Yet another cool little game. It's amazing. You know, he's like the Energizer Bunny. Every month got a little more MC10, sometimes CoCo, usually MC10 goodness coming for us. It's just cool to see him keep going. Very good. Okay, so here's a neat one, a weird one. Maybe it's meaningless. Maybe it's worth something. I don't know. Anyway, sometimes we've delved into some topics of intellectual property, and occasionally things like where video game companies have come after people for copying stuff, or maybe not even copying, but, you know, coming a little close or whatever. And I think we've had stories about musicians suing each other for copyright infringement and such, sometimes over just a couple of notes in a row or whatever. So in this case, somebody went through and kind of algorithmically determined essentially every combination of notes in a melody with certain parameters. They produced them all and documented them for copyright purposes and then placed them all in public domain. This is someone's probably rather vain attempt at eliminating copyrights on melodies. And part of the reason I say that is because given that these are generated mechanically, things generated mechanically kind of, I think, by definition, have no artistic content. Now, given that they would be identical in some ways to things that are generated through artistic effort or whatever, maybe that says something about the value of those human efforts. I don't know. So there's probably still going to have to be some courts involved. But read the article. It's a neat idea. I don't know if it helps the world or makes the world a better place. Certainly doesn't save anyone from any deadly viruses or anything like that, but maybe it's something to think about.
It was an interesting article. Like you were saying, I don't know how it would stand up in court, but valiant effort.
Yeah.
Well,
as I get older, the more I'm convinced that anything that goes to court is pretty much a crapshoot.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's mostly buying the ticket into the court for the crapshoot. But who knows?
Depends on which fallible human being you have on the bench.
Exactly. Oh, well, let's see. Moving on. So here's one that might be neat for some of the newer gamers, or newer, or maybe not newer, but people still active in gaming. So there's a game available for the Switch, Super Mario Maker 2. I think the original Super Mario Maker came out for the Wii U. Anyway, so sort of a modern game. The idea being to create somewhat custom games based on the mechanics of Super Mario Brothers, or at least modern versions of Super Mario Brothers. And in this case, someone calling themselves Downland 1983 on Atari Age apparently has gone out and created a recreation of Downland within Super Mario Maker. There's admittedly a certain amount of resemblance between the Downland game and the character and a certain Italian plumber, perhaps. I don't know. So it looks like a couple of people have picked it up and tried to play it. Not a huge thread, but there are some people. The graphics of the level look, pretty good. I don't know if that appeals to you. You probably want to check it out. What about you, Neil? Are you a Downland? I've never really heard you talk much about Downland.
Yeah, no, I actually like the game. I should do a review on it. Yeah, even back in the day, man, that was one of my games. I used to play it a lot.
Have you played this Switch Super Mario Maker version?
No, I got to try it out. I just recently got a copy of the Super Mario Maker 2, so I'm gonna check this out. It looks pretty neat.
Well, it's pretty cool. It's nice that some people are enamored enough of their games from the past or whatever that they're willing to recreate homages like this. Why not, right? Pretty cool stuff.
It brings it to a new platform.
Exactly.
New from Saguaro Software. Eagle, an enhanced lunar landing simulation for the color computer.
Eagle, you are go for orbital descent. Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Break from orbit and use your skill to land safely on the surface. Dual joysticks control your craft's thrust and attitude. Your flight computer continually displays horizontal and vertical velocities, acceleration values, vertical and horizontal distances to the surface, fuel consumption, and more. At advanced levels, test your mettle by injecting problems such as fuel leaks and display failures. Land and launch the upper stage back into orbit.
We are go for liftoff.
Eagle is as educational as it is fun. 32K color computer with 2 joysticks required. Eagle is just $24.95 on cassette or $29.95 on disc or AMDEC cartridge. Eagle from Saguaro Software. Since 1994, Cloud9 has made cool stuff for your color computer. Now Cloud9 is proud to announce the 2 MB Triad Plus memory expansion board. The Triad Plus works in 2 ways. Purchase just the Triad Plus board to expand your color computer 3 from 128K to 512K of RAM. Or add the new Protector Plus MMU to access the full 2 MB of static RAM aboard the Triad Plus. And the Protector Plus MMU utilizes full buffering to protect your CPU. Unlike previous 2 MB memory expansions for the CoCo 3, the Triad Plus operates seamlessly without the need for special patches, configuration, or workarounds. Games like Donkey Kong Remix and Sierra Adventure games simply work without hassle. And the Triad Plus will reduce your CoCo's power consumption and heat generation. The Triad Plus and Protector Plus MMU, only from the innovative engineering of Cloud9. Cool stuff for your color computer. Visit cloud9tech.com for details.
All right, we'll see. Well, moving on. So this one is from Jay Searle. Am I pronouncing it that way, Searle? I think that's correct. Jay, if I'm messing it up, you know how to reach me. So this was fallout from our now canceled CoCo Fest challenge. So Jay was working on a project to do an isometric style graphics game, but his was a farming game, which I think, which I never played Farmville, but I got the impression it was somewhat like or inspired by the old Farmville game that used to run rampant on Facebook. So anyway, he's created what he calls an open beta. And the beta, of course, means a testing phase for the game he's calling CoCo Grow. And like I said, it's a farming game. You basically pick sections of land to dedicate to certain vegetables or whatever, and there it is. Check it out. He's going to put some effort into it, and it looks pretty good. I don't know. Check it out. I'd like to hear what you guys think of the playing farming games on your CoCo. Sounds kind of weird to me, but hey, if it floats your boat, I'm happy for you.
Absolutely.
Yep. Cool stuff.
Cool. Well, thank you, Jay. All right, then also moving on, this one's from Jim Brain, also a fallout from the now canceled CoCo Fest challenge. So this is one of his blog posts. I think this is his first in the series. And the title pretty much says it all: direct memory access possibilities on the Tandy color computer. Well, maybe it's not quite all to say, but basically he's looking for how to build a card or the electronics that go on a card or like a cartridge that would allow the external hardware to be able to basically peek and poke memory into the CoCo's main memory. And so what's involved with that, what has to be done to synchronize or stop the CPU, and what other signals might be involved, I don't know. It's pretty interesting for me as someone who's had some education in some of the muddy waters here, shall we say. I thought it was interesting. Not super hard to follow. I think it might be harder to follow for people who don't have some of the college level education on some of these topics. But still interesting. Interesting that he's trying to work around some doors that were kind of almost purposely closed for him by Tandy or whatever, and seeing what he can do. Sound like he was able to get at least some amount of data to flow back across the cartridge port into the box. There's, I think, still some lingering questions of whether or not you could pull that off for the CoCo 3 because of a different design feature on the CoCo 3 that's kind of standing in the way. But anyway, pretty nice effort, and definitely some nice documentation and several blog posts. Definitely appreciate Jim's participation in our contest, trying to make CoCoFest better. Very cool. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, good read.
Yep, very good.
Yeah, it was a nice project.
Right.
An article from Prime at World of Dragon. Just to let you all know, I have put the disassembled and reassembled and commented source for the Dragon 32 and 64 ROMs online.
It's kind of like the Unraveled series for the Dragon.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I've seen some of the commentary around there. I think somebody said that if you open up the Unraveled series and kind of locate the right spots, it'll be pretty much the same sequences of instructions, but different labels, of course, and maybe different locations and different specifics. But so I think definitely you can see that the two chunks of code are cousins, if not brothers, but close, but not exactly the same.
That's good. Yeah, that's Prime. That's Phil in the Dragon world. He's pretty big.
Phil Harvey Smith or whatever.
Phil Double L.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So in case anybody was wondering. All right, my next news article here is from Jim Gary, and this is really cool because I used to like this demo. He's created the TRS-80 MC-10 bouncing ball demo, just like on the Amiga. It's kind of cool to see it on the MC-10 here.
It's neat and certainly, let's say, aspirational.
Yeah,
good description.
Hey, it can be done.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Does that qualify? Does the MC-10 have a demo scene now?
Maybe if it can play music at the same time.
Yeah. All right. Next news article is from Scott Wendt. This was a entry for the CoCoFest contest, which is canceled now. He's been working on it's a USB to CoCo gaming adapter. So it's pretty cool. I hope he follows through with this. It's a neat project.
It looks pretty cool. A lot of people are asking for that sort of thing, and kind of in both versions, but both to use CoCo joysticks through a USB port on an emulator, and also people asking for to use USB joysticks through an adapter to the CoCo.
Right.
His is more like the latter, I think. But
yeah, this is going to the CoCo gaming adapter. It looks like here.
Cool idea, and like I said, I'm sure if he could produce that, there'd be a lot of people happy to see it.
For sure. Yeah, that CoCoFest challenge that really got a lot of cool projects in the works.
Yeah, not quite as many as I was hoping for, but there was pretty good quality level on the ones that did get involved.
Right. Yeah, quality over quantity.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Next news article is from Adam Triunfo. This article is Hacking Astro Battle Space Invaders on the Bally Arcade Astrocade.
Yeah. A little bit of a wild card. Stuck this one in just because I think we've occasionally talked about projects like this. Even had somebody ask, how come we don't see more projects like this one in the CoCo world where people will take an existing binary and then hack the graphics. And we've seen some of this, right? We've seen like L. Curtis Boyle working on some stuff to optimize 6809 code and or to produce 6309 versions of games, which is, aspirational or whatever. Then, but I'm surprised we don't see more people just getting in and changing a frog into a toadstool or changing a spaceship into a rocket or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's not that hard to do that kind of stuff in most cases, and it can be a lot of fun. And I remember the first time I really saw something like that was when somebody hacked a Donkey Kong game so that you played with Pauline as the hero or heroine. And it's kind of cute, and it's fun, and why not, right? So.
Yeah. All right, next news article is from Daniel Arkin, posted on NBC News. This is kind of cool. VHS tapes are back in vogue as everything old is new again.
Yeah. Definitely thought of you, Neil, when I read that.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it's funny because not so much VHS tapes, but I've been kind of getting back into audio cassettes, like for music.
Yeah.
So it's kind of relates to the same kind of thing, and just having a tangible item, versus a streaming service. It's got a different feel, Not so much the quality, but.
Yeah, well, I'm waiting to see people having little parties where we'll all come in and sit around a CRT, television, and pop in a VHS and talk about how much warmer the video looks.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if we're going to get that like with the vinyl records. All right, my last one here is from Opal Extra at Reddit. After almost 40 years of service, this Apple II is still punching out patterns at a wool blanket factory. Now, I love seeing stuff like this.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool to see the old machine still doing stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know, it just kind of warms your heart. I'm thinking that somewhere there might be still a CoCo somewhere controlling somebody's bedroom lights or whatever.
Yeah, there's some old machinery, or I wouldn't be surprised if there's more of this out there. We just don't know about it.
Yep.
Yeah,
true. Yeah. I just hope it's not controlling a nuclear submarine or something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
No. Well, CoCos just control our lives.
That's right. The next news item is Z80 computer is both Arduino and a shield on Hackaday. This is really cool. So it looks like someone made a Z80 board with the connectors to fit Arduino shields. Fantastic idea.
Yeah, I've always liked that idea and kind of been passed by where people want to literally put Arduinos onto a CoCo and then hook the shields to the Arduino that's plugged into the CoCo. But my thought has always been, why don't we just, have the CoCo control the Arduino shields? So this is kind of closer to that. But then they go a step further, and then they put the pins on so that you can, as well as plugging the shields into this Z80 board, you can plug the Z80 board into an Arduino as a shield. So it's like Inception, I guess. A neat idea. Too bad it's a Z80, not a 6809.
Yep, could be done with the 6809, though. Very cool idea. All right, the next news item, which I can't see because it's on Facebook, is the Z79 fourth reference board now is a regular slave USB device.
Not a lot of information. The picture shows basically a perf board with some chips on it and a kind of a rat's nest of wires on the back. He says this Z79 fourth reference board is a slave USB device, blah, blah, blah. Well, you can run on 50 milliamps of power. He says, I hope a few people will take up the challenge of building the board and trying to run my 79 standard fourth or port it to existing platforms like the Tandy CoCo. The target processor is the Hitachi 6309, and that is not negotiable. And this is from a Francois Legal. So I don't have a lot more information than that. But if you're into fourth and you're into the 6309 or even the 6809, then you might want to check this out on the Facebook fourth programming group there. Kind of cool.
Yeah, that is neat. The next news item is from a former colleague of mine, OS9 Alan Huffman. Color Basic Optimization Challenge Scaling. So Al has on his Sabitha software page a number of tutorials in Basic, Color Basic for the CoCo, where he goes over different topics, and this one is about scaling. So it looks like he's drawing a box, and he's showing how to scale it.
I didn't list everything that Alan's been doing lately, but if you go to his blog and look around, you'll see He's had some stuff related both to the scaling stuff, I think a couple other basic language kind of things. It must have been getting close to CoCo Fest. Alan kind of shows up this time of year, usually cranks out some good content, but, kind of just all sort of pops out at once about this time of year right before CoCo Fest. And like I said, it must be that time.
Go Al. All right, the next news item is by a good friend of the show, Jim Gary.
Yay.
The Time Machine, Die Tijdmachine, I guess it's German, but looks like a nice YouTube video of a nice text-based adventure game for the CoCo. Kind of looks like Rocketoo a little bit.
Yeah, Jim doing his thing. We like to reward that.
All right, the next news item is from our good friend and colleague of the show, Mr. Ron Klein. Here's a link to Xroar's site for debugger information. It looks like Ron is back on the workhorse again with his project, the Raspberry Pi, and running Xroar on it.
Whereas Main, has a built-in debugger. It's not too bad. Maybe not the greatest thing ever, but I've used it for some stuff. It's pretty cool, but and pretty handy. But Xroar doesn't have that. But what it does have is an interface for what's basically remote debugging. Anyone who's worked on embedded systems with the GNU toolchain might be familiar with this in the real world, shall we say. And basically, you take that same mechanism using a version of GCC or GDB, actually, targeted for the 6809, which exists nowadays. And you can use it with Xroar and be able to debug using a GDB, or there's other tools that are kind of layered on top of GDB that you can then use to debug your running program inside of Xroar. Well, pretty neat.
Yeah.
Good job, Ron.
Yeah, very cool.
The Dragon is back with 64K. Hey la, Dragon's back. A serial port in the case is great. Hey la, Dragon's back. ROMs for two kinds of basic. New ways for you to be creative. Fully compatible with the Dragon 32.
Dragon Data Limited is proud to present the new Dragon 64. It has twice the memory of the Dragon 32, featuring a real serial communications port.
Get your Dragon 64 today. Hey la, Dragon's back.
Dragon Data Limited.
It's the one on your mind. It's a one of a kind. It's the color computer 2. Get yours today, up to 64K. It's the color computer 2.
TRS-80 color computers are better than ever. We've improved our most popular family of computers with a compact white case, low-profile electric typewriter quality keyboard, and prices that are less than last year's models. It expands easily with up to 64K of memory. The TRS-80 color computer is available only at Radio Shack.
Get yours today, up to 64K. It's the color computer 2.
Radio Shack, a Tandy company.
The next news item, Linux kernel's floppy disk code is seeing improvements in 2020. So this is interesting. As I guess ancient and antiquated as we may perceive floppies to be, someone is investing the time to make the Linux kernel's floppy code better.
So I don't know the whole story as to why this was an imperative for someone, or if it's just somebody's hobby curiosity, or if there's something bigger at stake for someone. But, we did run the story a few months ago about how the Linux floppy driver had been moved to an unmodified state or unmaintained state. And so now it sounds like there probably is a maintainer and they're doing some stuff, so that's kind of cool. There were a lot of references in the story to ARM architecture, particularly I think 64-bit ARM, but why do we need floppy drives on ARM architecture in 2020? I have no idea. But if you know, I would love to hear about it. Anyway, just kind of cool to think that that's still something out there. I'm sure David Ladd in particular will be really happy to hear that.
Yeah. Lord of the Floppy.
Yeah.
All right, our next one is from Diego Barrizo. Just in case anyone is wondering, the Asimov Awards are not canceled. The Asimov Awards are, of course, a programming competition for the color computer. It's kind of been on again, off again, but rather than it being canceled, it's just being delayed into September. I don't know if it'll coincide with whenever CoCo Fest happens, if it happens, but he's tentatively pushed it out to September, so it gives people more time. This ran last year, it's run again this year, and it's just generated some pretty good fruit. So if you're in that competition, keep going.
Yeah, definitely keep the work up. Thank you, Diego, for keeping the spirit up and promoting these things. And like I said, this is the thing some people need. Lots of us are out there. Sometimes people are just want to do something, but they're not sure what. And some people are, even today, some people are a little too self-conscious or embarrassed or whatever to post, even to post a blog post or a YouTube video. But sometimes if you say, well, there's a contest you could win or whatever, or at least participate, sometimes that's enough to kick people into action. So way to go, Diego, and thanks for keeping up the fight.
Good contest. All right, our next one is Darren Ottery's Frog Master game from the 80s. This is from Brian Palmer. Looks like it's a Facebook link. There is a disc out here of this game that you can load up.
I think he found the listing somewhere, and I think Breeza actually typed it in. And I saw the contact with Darren, and so that Darren confirmed that he was the author or whatever. So, I mean, I think that's it. Especially Brian Palmer found the listing in some magazine or another, perhaps Rainbow or something else, and typed it in, and so basically brought it back to life. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, cool. Our next one is thanks at Retro Gamer Mag. We agreed to supply you our console cards, and you copy the idea and create Teddy version. Nice thing to do to a charity. This is from Computer History Museum. They developed some kind of like playing cards that have all the different consoles, hundreds of different consoles with little brief specs about them and when they came out. Kind of a neat way to have a little history of console games in one small pack. They were supplying these to Retro Gamer Mag. They decided to create their own version, which they called the Console Clash, I think is what they called theirs.
Yeah.
So little piracy here, if you will.
Well, what, did they just not appreciate the competition making them better, or I don't know. Yeah. Sorry, it's hard not to be snotty about these things.
Looks like they stepped on some toes.
Yeah, it's a little stepping on toes there. So I mean, there's nothing to stop people from doing similar ideas, as we discussed here. It's just if your idea is a little too similar, or even if maybe you could have worked on something else and you do that just for whatever reason. Sometimes it's a jerky thing to do, and I know that seems foreign and weird to some people, and some people have certainly made it clear that they don't see the point or the problem. But other people do see the problem, and I guess I just couldn't resist pointing out that we're not the only ones who sometimes see a problem with that sort of behavior. Feel free to file, in this one special case, feel free to file any negative comments or reaction to this to Dev Null. Otherwise, we normally would love to hear your feedback, but if you want to tell us about how great it is to copy, we just really don't want you to waste your time. Thanks.
Next one is Kicking Bishop Brennan.
Basically, he's working on a project. The net of it is he's using the 6847. He's trying to exploit features or bugs or whatever they are of the 6847 in order to create hardware vertical scrolling, I think, in particular. Simon Jonasson has done some stuff like this in the past, so Kieran's a pretty bright guy himself. So between the two of those, those mates ought to have it locked up, or whatever the proper slang term is. I'm sure I butchered that. Anyway, those two ought to be able to get some stuff going if they work together, or either way. And of course, the real key is if you read the article, Kicking Bishop Brennan. The other day, John Linville set out a challenge. Well, that's enough to get on the show right there. Just mention my name. So very good. Good luck, Kieran, and I hope you find out some really cool stuff, or at least some more cool stuff.
Our next one is from Ed Snyder. Just received a new revision back on the little CoCo 2 clone board I've been fiddling with. It's a Facebook post by Ed, and he's developed this little CoCo. He calls it, I guess, the CoCo 2 Plus. It's a clone of the CoCo 2 on a small printed circuit board with some other. He's got some modifications to it. It's got slots you can plug in a CoCo SDC and plug in a keyboard. So he's just mentioning some of the things that he's doing on it. As far as I know, this isn't available for purchase, is it?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think you can buy it yet. Maybe it will be at some point. I don't know.
Well, hopefully he'll be demoing it at CoCo Fest when it gets rescheduled.
I'd love to see him come to CoCo Fest and demo things, or even come to Tandy Assembly. Neither one's a particularly far trip for him, where if he lives where I think he does.
Yeah, come out and share the wealth.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's not been able to avoid the temptation to add a few enhancements or extras or whatever. Looks like he's got some kind of switch you can flip to change the colors on the VDG, probably by shifting the phase on the color signals or whatever, or something to that effect. Not a huge fan of that, but I guess it's fine. So it does sound like he... In the joystick circuits, he's allowing for 2-button joysticks, basically CoCo 3 style 2-button joysticks, as opposed to restricting it to the original CoCo 1 or 2 style joysticks. That's kind of cool. I'm sure there's some use for this. Some people will enjoy it. Your mileage may vary. I don't know. We'll see if it comes out, and maybe we'll review it then.
Yeah, it looks like he said he's doing some bug fixes and things too. So he's still. Maybe he's refining it before he releases it.
Yep. So
thanks, Ed. All right, our final news item is from Ron Klein. It's the CoCo Pi 3 getting online with a BBS. And this is a nice little video. And, of course, Ron has been in charge of the CoCo Pi project. CoCo Pi 3 was built on the Raspberry Pi 3, and he's also porting it to the 4, so he's got the CoCo Pi 4. In this video, though, he shows you how to bring up the CoCo emulator and use the TCP Serve software to basically emulate an RS-232 pack and be able to get to a bulletin board system using Twilight Term. So it's a nice little video. Shows you how simple it is to get the CoCo Pi up and running and do some cool stuff with it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. See, like I said, Ron's had some distractions, real-life distractions, and I don't know if they've gotten better or worse with the new state of affairs in the world. But it is nice to see him get back to stretching his wings a little bit in the CoCo world, and we hope he'll be able to continue that and get some enjoyment out of that. Very good.
Yeah, thanks, Ron.
I would like to put a shameful plug in there that if you get that up and running and you want to call a cool BBS, my board is still running. Internal affairs.
Cool.
You check it out in all its antsy glory.
There you go. Even if there's some people on there that are very opinionated about the wrong way to say GIF.
Oh, yeah. Be careful about that.
Well, I think that's the end of our news section. Why don't we take another little break, and then we'll be back with some feedback.
This month, Radio Shack features great bargains on TRS-80 computer system furniture. The new deluxe terminal stand is perfect for the Model 2, 12, and 16. It rolls easily on locking casters and has 3 height adjustments of 26, 27, and 28 inches. Normally $179, it's available this month for just $129. Our budget computer table is perfect for the Model 3 or color computer. Its 48 by 24 surface affords plenty of room without taking too much space. Normally $69.95, it's just $54.95. live this month at Radio Shack. Our popular desktop printer shelf is just $19.99. It features walnut veneered side panels and allows tractor-feed paper underneath. It works great with the DMP 100 and 200. See these and other computer furniture bargains only at Radio Shack, a Tandy company.
This month in CoCo history. Welcome to This Month in CoCo History, where we explore events in the life of our favorite home computer. I'm Boise Pete, and this month we take a look back 36 years to March 1984 and a hardware product that made the CoCo speak. Real Talker was a cartridge-based voice synthesizer that performed text-to-speech conversions. That is, any typed word, sentence, or paragraph would actually be spoken by the CoCo over the television speakers. Real Talker came with a phoneme editor, which provided the ability to assemble custom speech using 64 phonemes and 4 inflection levels. These building blocks gave the user the power to create a myriad of custom speech patterns and intonations. One might think that such advanced technology for 1984 would cost hundreds of dollars, but on page 11 of the March 1984 issue of the Rainbow magazine, Real Talker sold for only $59.95 from Colorware in Woodhaven, New York. $59.95 for a CoCo-based voice synthesizer. Compared to today's text-to-speech products and voice assistants, Real Talker was a somewhat primitive product. Yet the technology itself and the tools that accompanied it would provide a solid foundation for understanding the nuances of the spoken word and how computers could emulate speech. And that's this month in CoCo history.
Does your color computer know what time it is? Well, now it can with the RTC10 real-time clock. The RTC10 is a quartz-based time-date clock contained in a compact ROM case. The included 2-year-plus replaceable battery keeps time accurate when the computer is off and even when the cartridge is unplugged. It can be used with or without a multi-slot unit. The included software allows you to set the clock as well as display time and date in the upper right corner of the video screen. The RTC10 makes it simple to access the time and date with just a few basic peaks. It's compatible with any 16K or greater extended or non-extended color computer. The RTC10 comes completely assembled, tested, and ready to plug in and use. The RTC10 real-time clock. Only $89 from Custom Computer Products. Goshen, New York.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back. Now it's time for some feedback. So we've got several items this month. All right, our first item comes from Mr. L. Curtis Boyle, and he's responding. He responded to a couple of things, but in particular, remarking on some of the comments from Mr. Mark McDougall about digging into code and being able to observe things about how well certain professional code was written or not written, or how well or not well it was written back in the day, that sort of thing. So Curtis observes this as, during my brief foray into optimizing older games for the 6309, there were a few that I was able to optimize noticeably even for the 6809. And in the case of games written by Dave Dyes, one could actually follow his progression and optimize 6809 coding as his career progressed. And he used more advanced techniques. His first games he did as a teenager in high school, which I found historically fascinating. So just kind of a cool observation, especially if you look at a body of work for someone, especially if you can put it in the context of time or whatever. Sometimes you can pick up that sort of stuff. It's kind of cool to imagine being able to watch someone grow in their skills 30 years after the fact. Pretty cool. All right, moving on. So the next one, was a tweet from @VintageNewOld on Twitter. I think that's Paulo Garcia. I'm not 100% sure, but that's his website, if I'm not mistaken. So I assume that's him tweeting. Anyway, it says, I've listened to the last episode of @CoCo Crew Podcast, and I can say without any doubt it's one of the best so far. Very informative, full of good content, great interview. Nice job. So hard to complain about that.
Yep.
Very good. Thank you
Thanks
for the
feedback.
compliments. And like I said, I think that's Paulo. Appreciate the compliments. It's always good to hear. moving on. So, for those of you that don't keep up with everything, when I found out last week about the postponement of CoCo Fest, while I was waiting on my wife to perform some errands, and I waited in the car, I took the time to make a little YouTube video, kind of expressing my, grief, for lack of a better word, over losing out on CoCo Fest. Maybe it's not lost, but for now it's at least not clearly here. Put about 8 minutes of video into the world saying really going to miss going to CoCo Fest and really sad about it. But I did encourage people to kind of find a project and work on it or whatever. And so here we get this comment from Mr. Robert Allen Murphy. John, please take note that even as you are trying to work through extreme disappointment, that you encourage people to take the time and learn something CoCo related. So, hey, that's nice. A good observation that at least I was trying to keep people going, not just wallowing in my own pity or whatever. So I appreciate you noticing and pointing that out, Robert. It's always nice when somebody in the community decides to give me the benefit of the doubt, because it's been a little bit short, been a little bit lacking over the past year or two as certain other people have become more prominent. On the same topic of that same video, we get a reaction posted on the YouTube from Steve Stroh. Now, this is not Steve Stroh Bridge. This is Steve Stroh, another fellow. This Stroh, S-T-R-O-H, like the beer. Anyway, he did not seem particularly happy with my take on the CoCo Fest cancellation. Basically, my take a week ago was, and probably still is, that I think in the long run we're going to look at this as a big overreaction. So he kind of takes issue with that. He says, if you really think that canceling CoCo Fest 2020 is an overreaction, then I'll just stop right there. And I did not say that canceling CoCo Fest, which, again, we postponed, so just to correct there, I did not say that was an improper thing to do. I said, I hope it's the right thing to do, and one way or another, you can't fight City Hall. So I'm not casting blame on Glenside or whoever for making that decision. What I'm saying is I think the world has lost its mind, and some people still would disagree with there, but if you're going to disagree with me, at least get it right? Anyway, he says, if you really think that canceling CoCo Fest 2020 is an overreaction, look at the demographics of the CoCo Fest attendees, and look at what happened and will continue to happen for weeks yet in Italy, very similar demographics. Well, that is true. There are people dying from this disease. Italy seems to be pretty hard hit. I'm also hearing some other stories that maybe that's not the whole story, or maybe that some of the record keeping in Italy not done at least to the same standards we would do it. Whatever. It's fine if you don't like what I said. That's fine. I don't care. I mean, I care as a human being, whatever, but I'm not mad about it. You can say it. I do think in the long run, we'll look back and think that this was overblown. I'm also prepared to be wrong. I've been wrong before. It happened. One time I thought I was wrong. I was wrong about that, too. Anyway, what can you say? Different people have different opinions here. Even within our team, I think our CoCo Crew here, I think we have somewhat different opinions about what should or shouldn't be canceled or whatever. And that's fine. It's we can have different thoughts and different feelings on these things, and we don't have to hate each other over it.
That's right.
And I don't think Steve hates me.
No, I don't think so. Just saying, Steve's a great guy.
It's just we just disagree on that.
Yeah, I think Steve is in the Northwest. I think he's up in the in Washington State. So he probably is more in the thick of it than we are. And that may be. Anyway, Steve, I do thank you for taking the time to reply and let us know what you're thinking. And we are happy to know where our community's at, and definitely no scolding on you. Thank you for taking the time to correspond with us. Yep, feedback encouraged.
Exactly. All right, well, I think that's all our feedback for this month. So why don't we take another little break, then we'll be back with the rest of the show.
My dad is the greatest dad in the world. Last weekend, we went to Radio Shack and brought home a brand new 64K CoCo 2. It was so cool powering it up for the first time. And we got lots of cool software. Me and my sister like to play Bingo Math in Downland. Dad and I like Galactic Attack and baseball. Mom uses it too. She uses color scripts and personal finance to balance her checkbook. About the only thing that could make it better would be banning my sister from using it.
Billy, that's enough.
Sorry, Mom.
The new Color Computer 2, only at Radio Shack, the technology store.
Okay, CoCo Cruisers, wow, welcome back. So we, this is actually our third attempt at this little discussion. And so, I hope as you listen, you'll keep in mind that we're trying to behave ourselves, shall we say, to keep the peace and such. Forgive us if we overstep a little bit. Clearly, there's some raw feelings here. We're trying to keep them under control. But again, this is our third attempt at this discussion. We're trying to get through it without doing any permanent damage. So anyway, so what's our topic? The wording of the topic started out as social distancing. Of course, is a sort of a topic du jour in the United States, around the world these days. We first hit the term social distancing probably about the same time as we learned that CoCo Fest for 2020 is being postponed. Not canceled, but postponed. We wanted to kind of talk about sort of the general effects of that, but then also maybe extend that to a suggestion that maybe this is not such a bad thing, both for, well, planning purposes. We originally had this topic just a few days after the last CoCo Fest planning session with Glenside, and sort of evident that, well, the truth is that the CoCo Fest planning wasn't exactly going smoothly. So maybe this postponement, maybe this isn't such a bad thing in terms of keeping CoCo Fest something good and worth going to. But the truth is, it also kind of bumps into the notion that maybe there's still, we've talked about that there were some rifts in the community about how 2019 was not a good year for the community, particularly the second half of it. Had a lot of hurt feelings, a lot of raw feelings, a lot of people really upset with me for, my hurtful sense of humor or whatever. Me being really upset with some people for going after my community reputation and trying to destroy it, all because of their own hurt feelings or whatever. Anyway, I'm going to go too far and ruin this third take. We'll have to come back for the fourth one. But anyway, we're trying to keep this civil. But yeah, a couple of key points. There's postponement. At 3 points, I guess, is the way, how is the postponement affecting us kind of personally or whatever. I published a video about this almost a couple of weeks ago now. We talked about that in the feedback section. But how is it affecting us? Then maybe it's not such a bad thing. Point 2 is maybe it's not such a bad thing because the team that's been handling the planning for CoCo Fest is maybe not as experienced as we normally would have, and maybe there's reasons there too. And then item number 3 is maybe the group itself is not necessarily in the best condition to be having gatherings anyway, so maybe a little extra time before we all gather again. Let some feelings heal or things be worked out. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. So, okay, that's enough of a monologue from me. I'm going to toss it out to the wider group here. So, Boise, Mike, Neil, who wants to start?
Well, of course, I'm a little bit disappointed that the fest isn't going to happen as it has. I've been going to CoCo Fest now since 1992, so that's, about 28 years. And it's kind of a yearly ritual for me. And given the state of where we are in the world with the coronavirus, it's like, you're trying to feel your way around in the dark. We'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. But as far as delaying the CoCo Fest, I have a couple of thoughts on that. Obviously, it has to be done. I think it can be an opportunity for the leadership to reevaluate things like the venue, how it's going to work out, speakers, those types of things that no one's been able to converge on just yet. It gives a little bit more runway for that. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing given how the planning has been.
Much like Boise was saying, I am disappointed. It's postponed. I'm not going to say canceled. I hope that things will clear up with this coronavirus sooner than later. We'll be able to have CoCo Fest maybe in the summer. This would have been my 10th year. I would have made a whole decade of going. So it's kind of, I was looking forward to this. It is the 40th anniversary of the CoCo, but I hope that it will, come to fruition in the summer. We'll see how things go. I'm being optimistic.
I think the summer might be a little too quick, is my guess. But when they say postponed, it's somewhat, they're not using the C word, canceled, but it kind of feels that way because things are so much up in the air. And then, of course, if this delay has to go on further, then we run into other venues around the fall and the early winter. So it could be that we don't have a CoCo Fest until 2021, but who knows?
Yeah, I think that is very likely. I think we're not the only event that's postponed, and we're talking about people getting married, weddings, bar mitzvahs, and birthdays, and retirements, and all other sorts of things. And as things eventually open up, I'm not sure when it'll happen. I'm sure it will happen eventually. But until the longer that takes, the longer the list of things that's been delayed. There are some of which, birthday parties or whatever, you probably won't have one more than a month or two after the fact. But people are still going to get married, or if they may get married anyway, but still have receptions and stuff like that. There'll be a big backlog.
Supply and demand.
I mean, that's already happening, right? I've got people in my family that are supposed to graduate college in May, and
exactly,
they may still get their degree, but there's not going to be any ceremonies, or that may be deferred.
It may take a long time. I mean, there may be, like you said, there may be things that are just canceled, but I suspect there'll be enough things that are not canceled that it'll take a long time to clear any backlog. CoCo Fest already has a problem competing for venues with these sorts of events. And so if there's a lot bigger demand, then that probably means the prices go up. And CoCo Fest financially is solid and has plenty of money, and could probably eat some of those, some amount of increase, but not forever maybe. But, we'll deal with the next year as it comes. But the finite resources of time and space will still dictate that they may not be able to get a spot until, next spring or even beyond. And so we may have to look at that one way or another, that or a radically different notion of what CoCo Fest is. Glenn's out has a picnic every year. So theoretically this summer we could have a picnic site for everybody show up and eat some hot dogs or something. That could be CoCo Fest, I guess, but not exactly the same.
Well, hopefully TND Assembly won't be interfered with, and we can.
That's what I was.
We can.
Well, as long as it doesn't get knocked out of its spot, hopefully it at least holds that spot.
Yes. To be fair to Glenn's side, obviously nobody planned for the coronavirus to shut the economy down, to shut society down. But I do feel that they didn't appear to be prepared for this fest. Seems like they've been spending a lot of time talking about a bylaw verbiage, adding post a mailbox, that kind of thing. That I think they probably need to shift more to. CoCo Fest. I mean, it is the main reason for the club to exist. And
it has been for some time. Now, in someone's defense, I'll say that there's some bylaws that are obviously antiquated or outdated, and they probably should be changed. The exact timeline of that, we could argue about it, but I mean, it's a pretty good argument that they should change some bylaws. Probably not the best use of everyone's shared time to go over them at the Glenside meetings, but you could argue that some of that is necessary. Now, like you said, the more discussion than I would have thought there to be about having the club rent a post office box to handle all the huge amounts of club physical mail. That while I was president and my address was listed as a club address, I got zero mail for the club, so I can't imagine that there's a lot more now. certainly not enough to warrant a big discussion over a P.O. box.
Yeah, we've gone 28 years without one, and
then speaking of 28 years, the big discussion about the logo for the club, and the club doesn't even have stationery. the club doesn't have a product to promote. I don't know. Those are silly things, but the point is discussing some of those things took away from discussing the preparations for CoCo Fest, so much so that there was basically no nailed down speakers that I could that I could find. There was basically a list of names of possible speakers, which is pretty late to not have in mind anyone who's going to speak, or have it actually determined. As far as I know, they hadn't even picked the menu for the dine-in option. Anyway, I'm not here to prosecute a list of crimes against Glenside. I will offer that maybe the CoCo Fest planning wasn't really ready anyway, so maybe it's not such a bad thing that we're delaying. Maybe that puts us back on track.
I would say with the emphasis on meeting remotely like people are doing now all over, that we have a good chance to get this right. So leadership steps up and solicits lots of feedback and makes a plan of action, whether it's in the fall or what I think is more likely next year, right? Given the uncertainty, it could be a really good event.
With something like 70% of the workforce now doing some version of work from home, I think that's the right number. Maybe it's a different number, but it's a lot bigger than it used to be. That puts a lot more people having to learn how to do, basically what we're doing right now is teleconferencing, how to conduct meetings online and that sort of thing. And as somebody who has sat on Glenside meetings off and on for years now, and who used to call into them actually, hanging off an actual analog phone line, let me tell you, those meetings have not traditionally been conducted properly to include people attending remotely. Getting better, I guess. Still not where it probably should be. But maybe everyone having a little extra experience with doing online meetings will help that continue to improve. And maybe they'll make better use of some of the remote resources, i.e. volunteers, and how not to waste as much of their time and that sort of stuff. So, hope springs eternal.
Well, if they do manage to reschedule CoCo Fest, I think we'll probably all try to make it, of course, and support the event.
For sure.
Sure. I can't guarantee, obviously, without knowing the dates and
right. It's just in limbo.
Yeah.
But I would guess that I would, if I can make it, I would guess that I would. And I'm crazy. I'm a fanatic. I'm the guy that talked, half of the community that's less than 5 years new to the community. I'm the guy that talked them into showing up. So obviously, I'm crazy about doing these things, and I really value the event.
Yeah, I think it's because we care about the event that we have an opinion about it, because we care about
Absolutely.
it. We want it to continue.
Part of CoCo history.
Absolutely.
Well, we'll just have to see how events carry us through for the next few months, because I think it's too early to call even a season on when the fest will be back. But maybe within 2 to 3 months we'll have some idea of, when things start happening. I would say this too: not everybody drives to the fest. I know a lot of people do, but some people like me take airlines to fly to the fest. So it's important to factor that into account.
Oh, yeah. So what you're saying is, if we suddenly got an opening day after next Tuesday, we can't just take it because only me and Neil would be there. And the local.
Yeah. Well, it's to the club's advantage, to the fest advantage, to try to promote as many people coming as possible. So the way to do that is give enough lead time and, pick a date that doesn't collide with other events, because there's going to be other events out there that are going to be doing the same thing, right? Other retro computing events jockeying for position.
Sure.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of pent-up demand. Like we were talking about July, that probably is going to be early. But
that's
same thing with airlines, right?
as soon as the chains are off, people are going to start flying like mad again.
That's true.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
But so clogged airports and whatever else could be a problem. If suddenly things opened up tomorrow, then there's at least what's the list? You got 4 or 5 canceled or delayed retro computing events that would all try to if they could have them the next weekend. CoCo Fest scheduling is going to have to take that into account. Try not to try not to cannibalize the retro computing world, and hope that the rest of the world doesn't cannibalize CoCo Fest, right? And dare I say it, hopefully CoCo Fest doesn't step on any Tandy Assembly toes by scheduling right in the end of October.
Yeah, that'd be a shame. If the events are too close together, it's going to overlap.
Yeah, definitely. And if they go much farther than Tandy Assembly, then you're already back into the time frame of time to have another CoCo Fest, unless you're going to delay next year's CoCo Fest, and suddenly next CoCo Fest becomes a midsummer thing or something like that.
I think Christmas Day would be a good day to have it.
Well, it is easy to fly on Christmas Day.
Yeah. I'm off work that day too, so.
Do you think they would get a Christmas tree?
Type in the Christmas tree programs from the old Rainbows when, put up a Christmas tree graphic and replace the Christmas tree or whatever. Except now it'd have to be holiday trees, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Or winter festival trees.
So we got to modify all those Christmas demos on the CoCo now.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Is that the sound of the horse being beat?
Yeah, I was going to say, does that cover it now? Is there anything else to cover? Or?
This was a good wrap-up. I think it probably conveys the feelings of other people about the fest.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, well, gentlemen, thank you for, I think we'll probably have a successful trial number 3 here. And, of course, listeners, thanks for listening. I hope you found this useful. And, of course, play with your CoCos and CoCo forever.
It's starting to rain. I'm going to roll the windows up on the car.
Okay, sweetheart.
You've worked hard for your color computer. It took years to assemble all of the pieces. You're thinking about the next step for your system, and you're happy that the rain gives you a chance to spend time with your computer.
Oh my God!
Life is unpredictable. That's why CoCo Mutual wants you to think about term system insurance. Taking care of future expenses if anything should happen to your vintage computer system. It's easy. We get to know your lifestyle and your needs. Then we give you our best quote and our competitors. You could receive up to $2,000 of coverage for just $15 a month. We offer plans with no medical exam required. Call CoCo Mutual at 888-6809 or visit CoCoMutual.com for your free quote. It's not just your computer, it's your life.
It's Operation, Milton Bradley's goofy game for dopey doctors. Now for the Tandy Color Computer 3. The operating table plugs into your color computer's cartridge slot. The computer assigns each player which procedure they are to perform.
Remove funny bone.
Careful. If you touch the sides... You blew it, Charlie. Funds are automatically removed from your account and you earn malpractice demerits. Your colleagues are suddenly busy at lunch. Next.
Take out wrenched ankle.
A winner. Funds are transferred to your account and you earn malpractice insurance points. Enjoy the ride home in your BMW 4 Series convertible.
I hate you.
Operation, a game for your color computer from Milton Bradley.
Operation is for entertainment purposes only. Operation should not be considered as any form of medical advice or medical training. Milton Bradley does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned in his products. Reliance on any information provided by Operation is solely at your own risk. 128K Tandy Color Computer 3 with composite or RGB monitor required. Drink responsibly.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back. We have a real treat this month. We have a interviewee. We're going to be talking to Mr. Carl England. Carl has been around the community some time. Don't want to reveal that he might have a little age on him, but I guess we all do. So, welcome, Carl. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Awesome. And of course, we're joined by the most of the other hosts. Let's see, we've got Mr. Neil Blanchard. Hello, Neil.
Hello, everyone.
Of course, Mike Rowan. Hello, Mike.
Hello.
And, of course, we got Boise is in there, too. Boise, hello.
Good afternoon, everyone.
And, of course, I'm John Linville. So, without further ado, Carl, why don't we start with just you to give us a little background about where you're from, how you got involved with computers, and how you came to love the CoCo.
Well, I'm here in Calhoun, Georgia. That's northwest Georgia in the USA, of course. And I was actually serving in the Air Force when I got my very first CoCo, and I absolutely fell in love with computers at that time. I would spend my entire evening and well into the night after I got off from work playing with a machine, and I just fell in love with programming mainly. Love assembly language. Before I got the CoCo, I had a MicroAce computer, which was a clone of a Sinclair, and it only had 2K of RAM. So at that point, I learned to write tight code, and that's something I always did on the CoCo, even when I got up to 64K of RAM, which I never believed any program would ever need that much memory.
Awesome. How have you occupied your time with the CoCo? What have you created and left to the community, that sort of thing?
Well, what people seem to like the most is my SuperBoot program, which was just a quick way of it was a menu-driven boot program. You type DOS, it brings up all the files on the screen, up to 32 files at a time. You switch pages, select a file, and it automatically runs it. But what people really seem to have liked was the defeater program, which was a copy protection defeater. It didn't actually remove the copy protection. If you had a little bit of knowledge about how the disk was organized, you could use that program to copy disk. You'd make a new copy protected disk.
That's pretty cool. If you're going to copy it, you might as well do it right?
Yeah.
Keep it in its original.
That's cool. Well, that's what I was thinking. The defeater was your baby. How did you acquire the knowledge necessary to do that? How did you learn about floppy disks at that level?
That came from Spectral Associates' book, Disk Basic Unraveled. I essentially read that book. That was my Bible for the CoCo.
Yeah.
Everything I needed to know was in that book. What I would do is, at first, I was just wanting to copy disks. And I wasn't really wanting to pirate disks. I just liked the challenge of making copies. And I wrote a patch to the Disk Basic where when you format a disk, Disk Basic does a write track. It doesn't write the sectors individually. It writes the entire track. So I patched Disk Basic so that when I called it, instead of writing the track, I would read the track. And then I could examine the actual data that was on that track and determine what people had done to copy protect it.
That's cool. That's pretty clever. So is there anything that sticks out in your mind as clever copy protection schemes, or maybe even especially dumb ones?
Well, yeah, the dumbest was, of course, some of the early copy protection, they would just have a sector that didn't exist on the disk, and files would be, not all the program would be in the files, so to make a copy, you needed to back it up. Well, because the sector didn't exist, backup would abort with an error. So then a quick little patch you could make to back up the disk and ignore errors, or you could just do a sector by sector copy of the entire disk, and it worked fine. Now the good stuff was when you do a disk read using the 1793 disk controller, which is what the CoCo had, it would read every single byte that was on the disk, except for if the byte was an FC, which is the command to reset the CRC check, and also it would not properly read a F7, which was a command to generate or read the CRC. If you hit an FC, there should be 3 FCs at the beginning of every sector. What it reads instead on a disk read is either 14A1A1, or it could read A1A1A1. Found out that real early. Realized that I needed to, anytime I saw those 3 bytes together, just rename those to FCs. The F7 was a little bit more difficult because it was 1 byte, but it generated a 2-byte CRC. Now somebody came up with the idea of using that 2-byte CRC to create their track and sector number, which made it really interesting trying to copy those disks.
I can imagine.
My absolute favorite was some of the disks had a CRC errors, a lot of the sectors, and they had to be there. You could make if you did a sector by sector backup, you could make a perfect copy of the disk, but it had no errors. And somewhere in the program it tested for those errors. And if you made a backup of that disk and you tried to run it, it would format the disk and then display on your screen, buy your own. And I thought that was so neat.
That's awesome.
Wow. So what's the time frame when you were creating Defeater, and how long was it viable in the market?
Well, unfortunately, I came up with a Defeater when the CoCo was starting to wind down. It was in I remember it was 1994 was when it was available, and I tried to sell it. I sold a few copies. I was at a CoCo Fest, and I said, buy it now because next year it'll be 1995. I was just making a play on words. So that's why I remember what year it was. But later, I had the Defeater working. It was doing what I wanted. And I got contacted by a guy in Australia by the name of Ryan Palmer, also known as Breeza. Mm-hmm. He had some discs that he was able to make copies of on the PC using hardware called a cat weasel. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to know if we could make CoCo discs out of those. And he sent me copies of the files that he got, and I read them, and they were a little bit off from the CoCo standard, but I stripped out the code that I didn't need, and I started making patches to the Defeater so that I'd send him a patched version along with his code, and it would make a CoCo disc. And I made, I don't know, there had to be a dozen different patch versions of the Defeater that did that for different programs. And while I was in the middle of that, I suddenly realized I don't have to personally examine the discs. I could actually write a program that would examine them for me. So I came up with a program called Backup Magic, which does it all for you. Of course, very few people have heard of that one. I never actually, well, I did try to market it. I don't think I actually sold any of those. But it actually does all the work for you. You just put in a disc and it copies it.
Wow.
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
It also moved it to, it allowed you to move it to a David Keels emulator. It would make files that could be read on the emulator, and the emulator could recreate the copy protected programs.
Well, that's cool. Sounds like I need a copy of that.
Well, it is on the archive.
All right, I have to go look.
I was looking at that backup magic on the archives earlier today, and I noticed the manual says 2006, so that was quite a late release.
Yes, it was. That's the reason I really couldn't sell it. By that time, there were very few people that really were playing with the code. I mean, I'm sure there's still a lot of people playing with it, but most of the software that they want is already available on the archive or wherever. So a program to back it up is not that important anymore, but it still exists.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure you probably know that the floppy disk hardware on the Apple II was a lot more, shall we say, flexible, and so a lot of times there was special floppy driver code in an Apple II program that was tied in with the copy protection. My understanding is that the Western Digital floppy controllers, like in the CoCo, are, let's just say, not quite as flexible. So, as someone who has a lot of expertise in manipulating those chips to copy diskettes, how much of making useful backups of a copy-protected program on the CoCo is literally making the physical diskette versus how much of it is, by trying to figure out how to crack the hidden routines inside the software that are looking for the special diskettes or whatever. Do you have an opinion on that? Do you have much expertise in actually cracking the games, or did you mostly stick just to literally copying the diskettes to make them as accurate as possible?
I never looked inside the games. I just tried to copy the diskettes. And I suppose that any double density disk could be copied on the CoCo using this software, because it recognizes all the weird things that pretty much all the weird things they could do, like unusual sector sizes. I even saw one where the sector was an unusual name. It was the wrong size, and they had like sector 19 side 0 and side 1 both on side 0 of the disk. So you had to actually tell it you were reading side 0 or side 1, which the CoCo, the software normally ignores which side.
Yeah, and there's this fellow in the Apple II community who has this, he has an alias. He calls himself 4 a.m., which is supposed to represent when he's doing his hacking or whatever. But that's something he's gone to a lot of trouble is hacking copy-protected Apple II games and making the images available. He writes of his blog posts about doing that sort of thing or whatever. Really just an aside, not strictly speaking related to what you're doing, but just filling you in where my mind is. So I don't suppose you'll be taking up the mantle there of breaking copy protection on any CoCo games that are left that require it.
I've actually packed my CoCo away. I keep wanting to bring it back out, but my wife says that it jumps up the living room, which I disagree with. But I still run the emulator some. Well, the VCC emulator. I like David Kill's emulator, but unfortunately, it doesn't support 64-bit.
No.
And it had the best support for DOS-based systems. It didn't like Windows at all.
It's a great emulator for floppy support.
Yeah, David Kill, he showed up to a couple of CoCo Fests. I don't think he got as much attention as he was hoping to see, so he may have written us off. But he did have some good emulation projects going. He had Z80-based TRS-80s as well as CoCos, and I think some other systems. Maybe if David, if you're a listener, reach out to us and let us know what you're up to.
I worked with him some. He had his emulator at one of the shows, and I pointed out that for some reason Photon did not work properly with the joystick. And he went back in his code and he said, "Oh, they did something weird with the timing. The Photon should work, but it doesn't." He modified his code to fix it so that it did.
That's cool. Yeah, he's pretty conscientious about doing stuff like that.
His emulator was great. I wish that there was an updated version that would run on Windows 10, because I would definitely be running. I like VCC, but his emulator was the absolute closest to a real CoCo that I've seen.
Yeah, I agree.
So I have a question about or surrounding the defeater software. You'd mentioned it earlier. I remember buying it from you, but I remember buying it from you at a fest probably, I don't remember. Carl, was it the early 2000s you had put it out or late 90s? What's the time frame around that software?
The defeater, I sold it in 1994.
Okay.
At a fest.
As I recall, you would go to Chicago Fest, right?
Yes.
And there were some Atlanta Fests in 92, 93, 94, 95 that I went to. Did you go to those as well?
Yes. Oh, I went to one of them.
I certainly remember.
I shared a booth with a guy from Sub-Etha.
Alan Huffman.
Alan Huffman, yeah. I shared a booth with him at the Atlanta Fest. We were both pretty much just getting started selling software.
Well, I just want to mention something. I don't have a question, but just want to let you know, Carl, when I got back into the CoCo in 2005, your defeater software was gold to me. I actually, first person to reach out to me for making real disc images was Breeza from Australia. So I learned a good deal of making up these original discs again. So I just want to say your software is amazing. Now, I haven't tried the Backup Magic. I'm going to give that a whirl.
Yeah, that has been the big secret, apparently, because it does everything that the defeater does, but you don't have to manually intervene with it. It just does it. It will actually back up a disc in less time than it takes to format a disc. And you don't have to format the disc. It formats as it backs it up.
Wow, that's amazing.
There was a program in, I think, 87 that was similar to that. Was it called Backup Lightning?
I've seen Backup. Well, I've seen references to Backup Lightning. I've never actually used it.
It was. I used that program quite a bit. Now, it was somewhat like what you said. You could insert a disk, and it would read that disk and write it out. I mean, just very fast to any other drives you had on your system. I think it was a guy by the name, I think his last name was Babcock, that wrote that program. I think it was called Backup Lightning. Kind of did the same kind of thing, but yours came out after that, apparently.
Yeah, and I've used Backup Lightning myself, but the only thing with that software, it won't do copy protection. So any disks that are copy protected, it won't do.
That's true.
It is fast, though.
Yeah. That was the reason that I wrote mine, was just for the copy protection. If I wanted to do backups, I wrote another utility that did a single disk backup. It loaded all the disk into the 512K memory and then dumped it to another disk. I wrote one to do that. I wrote most of my utilities just because there were things that I needed, or just for fun.
Right. I take it that it was too late in the cycle of the CoCo world for any company to object to that software, because by then nobody was really selling that much software anymore. Is that right?
Well, I don't know if anybody objected to it or not, but at that time, it was so late in the cycle that people were worried about losing their only original copies of things. In fact, one of the first copy protection things I wrote, guy contacted me. I don't remember from where, but he had a copy of he'd bought Kumgai from Sundog Systems. Yeah, he said he'd used it and crashed it, and he sent it back to them. They replaced it, but they were a little bit nasty about replacing it, which I really don't understand. But he was afraid that he'd crash it again and they wouldn't replace it. And he asked me, could I make a backup of it? I said, well, I think I can. I do pretty much anything I want to on this machine. So next thing I know, his original disc was in the mail. Wow. So I wrote him a little patch and sent it back to him.
Wow.
It's understandable why they would want to copy protect, I mean, at the time, to protect their investment so that they could counter pirates. Nowadays, as you point out, it's more important to preserve what few diskettes are left, I would imagine, which makes your product like yours still valuable.
Definitely.
And if you've got a Windows 98 machine, you can actually move it to a virtual disk with Backup Magic.
That's a nice feature.
I wonder how well it works with the CoCo STC.
I don't have one, and I'm not sure how well it would actually work with that, because you don't have a real floppy drive anymore. You don't have the 1793 controller.
Well, it's supposed to emulate that, but anytime you start testing the boundaries of emulation, bound to be something in there to make things tricky.
So, Carl, are you doing anything at all CoCo-wise?
Right now, when I run a CoCo, I run the emulator. I don't have a real system set up. It's packed away for right now, which is sad because I enjoy that machine. That's just the difference between the CoCo and a PC. Back when you had a CoCo, you had something you could enjoy programming on. The PC, if you need software, you go on the internet, you get it. With the CoCo, you needed software, you sat down and you wrote it.
Yeah.
Did you use OS 9 at all, Carl?
I used OS 9. I wrote a few programs in OS 9. Just didn't really enjoy it as much as getting to the real hardware with the assembly language.
Yeah, and I can understand that. You kind of see both. You can see it both ways. Having the operating system there to do a lot of tasks for you is certainly helpful and kind of keeps you concentrated on your value add. On the other hand, sometimes writing that code to hit the hardware and do cool things is the point. And so getting the operating system kind of just gets in the way of the fun, too.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed using OS 9. I just wasn't a programmer. Right?
Sure.
One of my favorite programs on OS 9 was Ultimuse 3. I actually sat down and keyed in our entire songbook from church, our entire hymnal, so that if the regular piano player wasn't there, I had a disc with the songs.
Wow. That's awesome.
And OS 9 did teach me a lot about Unix, which was necessary with certain tasks at work, because at the time, I was working with some Unix machines at work, and I'd say, well, heck, these are the same commands as OS 9, maybe a little different. Most of my programming that I do nowadays is at work using industrial software called ladder logic. I write programs for machines at work, but
PLCs.
Have anything that's a lot of fun. Yep. Yeah, PLCs.
Mm-hmm. So did you work with computers before you got into personal computers, or did that kind of launch your career into computers?
The CoCo's the thing that actually taught me everything that I know about the computers. And it has helped me a lot when I'm working with the PLCs at work, because I already think in hex code. I already think in bits. I didn't have to learn all that for the PLCs.
Yeah, that's a common theme for many of us, and it definitely makes a difference when you understand at the bits and bytes level what's going on. When something doesn't work, you've got a better concept of how to troubleshoot it and fix it.
What about your book writing, Carl? Tell us a little bit about.
What about my book writing? I'll check that out. I'm actually writing.
Cool.
Not code anymore, but.
What sort of genre is that?
It is a mystery, and that is my premier book. The second one in the series is with the publisher right now. They're currently proofreading it. They've gone through one pass of proofreading, and I'm hoping it'll be released soon. I was actually hoping that it would be released before Christmas to get the people who bought Kindles and Nooks at Christmas, but that didn't happen.
Maybe you could develop a plot around a CoCo spy mystery or something, or some CoCo community drama that you could write about.
Yeah, right to your small market. That's where the money is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's why I made so much money on Backup Magic.
Yeah. Well,
you mentioned when you were figure out how to copy these different games with different copy protection. There's different schemes. Do you remember any of them that were really difficult, like some of the game titles?
No, I don't remember the titles that were really difficult. I just remember the methods.
Yeah, that one you mentioned that formatted itself, that overwrote it. I know that Nuke the Love Boat did that. I always thought that was pretty cool. You get that message when you go to run the game.
I really liked that. That one was very difficult to beat too, because it's hard to make a sector that has a bad CRC. I actually had to do disk writes on those tracks because I could not. If I made the track and then wrote sectors, they were always good CRCs.
Huh. Yeah.
That actually may have been the hardest one I had to work on to defeat.
I believe it.
Yeah, I didn't really pirate the games for my use. I just made copies because by the time I was making this, I'd quit playing games. After the challenge.
Yeah. It was a challenge to defeat it.
And there were people that were asking me, "Hey, I've got a disc I need to make a backup of."
And this kind of preserves software too, right? Like looking at it now, all these years later, it's utilities like yours actually help preserve the software.
Well, preservation is important for sure. There's some people who want to maybe stand in the way of that, but from a historical perspective, I'd say it's important. Good to have the tools available. And this can be your message to the future of all CoCo kind. What do you want the people playing with the CoCo 20 years from now? What do you want them to know that you know now?
That it was one hell of a machine, and still is. It was very powerful, most powerful processor in its day, and the people that wrote the software for it were some of the most impressive people there could ever be, because they did things with that machine that you weren't supposed to be able to do. They didn't just think outside the box. They thought outside the warehouse where they keep that darn box.
Very good. Very good. Someone figured out how to copy the software that the other guys are trying to stop you from. So, very good.
There were some brilliant people writing copy protection software.
Well, Carl, thank you for taking some time and for joining us for this interview, sharing some of your wisdom and knowledge with us. Definitely been enjoyable. And, of course,
thank you.
Thank you to my co-host for joining us, helping to move this along, get some good information out to our listeners. So, listeners, thank you for listening. All right, with that, I think we'll probably draw this to a close. But once again, Carl, thank you for joining us. And now we'll return you to the rest of the show.
Computing is a lot of fun. However, you must know the rules of computing and obey them, or you will find it a very dangerous sport. A computer safety manual may be obtained from your local safety council, police department, Radio Shack Computer Center, or Radio Shack store. If you suspect a malfunction with your computer under conditions such as the unit has been dropped, thrown, or stepped on, the power cord is damaged, frayed, or glowing, the unit is exposed to rain, water, or mountain dew, do not attempt any further adjustment, as doing so may further damage your computer. Remember, there are no serviceable parts inside the unit. Back away slowly, move diagonally if possible, and avoid all direct eye contact with the unit. When you have reached a safe distance, contact a professional Radio Shack service technician. They will provide further instructions and may recommend protective clothing, containing the unit with inert materials such as sand or vermiculite, creating an expedient shelter. For your own protection, be sure to follow all instructions provided in your computer's manual or by Radio Shack service technicians. Computing can be a pleasurable experience as long as you always remain alert. Don't be a clown or show off while computing. You are just inviting injury or death.
Every day, a color computer is abandoned or abused. They live in the dark recesses of garages, basements, storage sheds, barns, and attics, waiting for someone to help. Hi, I'm Helen Bleeding Heart. Please say you'll be the answer for CoCo suffering the effects of extreme temperature, overexposure to ultraviolet light, and conditions unfit for electronics. These CoCos need your help. Please call 888-6883 or go online and join the Color Computer Preservation Society with a monthly gift right now. For just $18 a month, you can rescue CoCos from their abusive environments, provide repair of damaged parts, administer retro bright treatments, and most of all, provide love. Call or sign up online in the next 30 minutes and we'll send you a photo of a CoCo being lovingly reconditioned by the CCPS. And you'll receive this beautiful tote bag that declares, I saved a CoCo. Yours for your generous, perpetual monthly gift. This is your chance to say, I won't sit by while a CoCo is wasting away. Please, won't you call or go online right now?
Listening to the CoCo Crew Podcast.
Welcome back to Neil's Corner on episode 58 of the CoCo Crew Podcast. Well, on this segment, I've got something brand new to review, and when I say brand new, I'm talking released a few weeks ago. March 2020 to be exact, and also a good measure to date stamp this recording. I also want to add that this game could have not come at a better time, because as you are all aware, we are stuck inside keeping a social distance from everyone during this coronavirus pandemic. If you haven't guessed the game yet, I am talking about GunStar, coded by Nick Marentes from Australia. I'm sure all of you recognize his name as he brought us a ton of games from back in the day, such as Donut Dilemma, Space Intruders, Rupert Rhythm, and more recently, Popstar Pilot. Now he brings us his latest game, GunStar. It is a 2D side-scroller shooter, or shmup, as the game genre is called. I will also mention I am a huge fan of this game genre. I got into the TurboGrafx 16 game console mainly because of this genre, and well, of course, for my love of Bonk's Adventure. Another reason I was excited to try this shooter out is it's a great test for my new CoCo arcade joystick I'm building and plan to sell when we get them into production. Anyways, enough of that, let's dig into the game. GunStar requires a Tandy Color Computer 3 with 512K memory, joystick, and a 6309 Hitachi processor upgrade. Apparently this game will not boot or run without the 6309 CPU upgrade. I believe this is the first ever CoCo 3 game that requires that. Oh wait, now that I think about it, Roger Taylor had a game called Spider Hype with a 6309 only version. But he did have a 6809 version of that game, so I guess that is a little different. When I loaded GunStar, I was greeted by a sharp-looking high-res screen with the game information. I hit the joystick fire button as told to do so. I was prompted by a skill level question, Wimp or Hero? Well, naturally, I tried the Wimp mode button. Then I realized it doesn't save to the high score list. So, Hero mode I went. As soon as I got into playing the game, I was immediately impressed, as I noticed not only does the game scroll vertically, but as you maneuver your ship left and right, the screen will also scroll horizontally. The play area is actually larger than the screen display, typical of classic Japanese shooters from back in the day, such as the game 1943. I made it to level 3 on my first few tries of playing. The first level gets you used to the feel of the game. At the top right-hand corner of the screen, there are 2 level bars. The top green bar is your shield power, and there are generous amounts of little green orbs to collect, which will boost your shield power throughout the game. The lower red bar is a special power-up you can get by finding the red orbs. Once you have found one of these red orbs, and you use this special power-up, it will destroy everything on the screen at once. I believe you can use this 3 times until you have to find another red orb to repower it. To access the special power-up, use the second joystick button. Now, on the lower right-hand screen, there's another bar, and this is a progress bar, and it'll show you how much longer you have to traverse through the current level. I thought that was a nice touch.
because on a lot of these kind of 2D shooters, you never know how much longer you have to go. Level 2 is where things start to change. You have to shoot square boxes to enter a code. Each time you shoot the box, it will flip to the code symbol you need. The code itself is 4 characters long, and you must do this 4 times total in the hero mode, or twice on the wimp mode. After I completed the code, I was up against the end boss. This end boss was massive. I was impressed, with huge sprites scrolling at once. You don't normally find CoCo games with that. I luckily was able to defeat the end boss and moved on to level 3. This level goes back to the likes of the first level, albeit a lot trickier. More enemies coming at you and a lot more you have to dodge. Unfortunately, I didn't make it past level 3, so that's as far as I can describe at the current moment. I do, however, want to complete this game, so I'm not going to give up yet. Probably for the best right now anyhow, so I don't spoil the entire game for you. I'd also like to mention the sound effects are fantastic. Here are my pros and cons for the game. Pros: beautiful graphics with super smooth scrolling, excellent sound effects, keeps a high score, and fantastic replay value. For any shoot-'em-up fans, this game will keep you wanting to play again and again. Cons: no in-game chiptune music, and requires a 6309 processor upgrade. There's nothing wrong with taking advantage of the extra power from the 6309, but what worries me is some people butchering their CoCo 3s, trying to do this upgrade themselves without having any solder skills. Please, if you are listening to this, do not attempt this upgrade if you're not handy desoldering the original 6809 and soldering in the new 6309 upgrade. I hate to see CoCo 3 motherboards ruined over a video game. As for the music, who knows, maybe in the future Nick will release an update to take advantage of the plethora of CoCo sound card options available in the CoCo community. Overall, this game is fantastic and an absolute bargain. For just $10, you can get a digital download right off of Nick's website. Oh, and speaking of his website, he has an amazing blog on this game. He started working on this game back in 2017. Or you can opt for a $20 physical copy mailed to you on a CD with a few bonus items, such as an updated version of Donut Dilemma. Either way, I highly recommend this game if you're into shoot-'em-ups. As a shameful plug, I also like to add my new arcade joystick works amazing with this game. Stay tuned, as my joystick will soon be ready for release. Well, there you have it. Another brand new game for your CoCo 3. Until next month, happy CoCo gaming and retro forever.
You're listening to the CoCo Crew Podcast.
Well, we have reached the end of episode 58 on the CoCo Crew Podcast. I'd like to thank our host, John Linville, for procuring all those news articles, Mike Rowan for painstakingly editing and creating new commercials each month, Boise Pete for being a part of this podcast, and our CoCo historian. Like I always say, Boise remembers it, so you don't have to. Ron Klein, where are you? We miss you. Hope to see you come back soon. Huge thanks to Carl England for giving us some of your time this month to capture an interview with you. I must say I found this interview very fascinating, as I've always been interested in floppy disk copy protection. Last but not least, a big thanks to all of you who listen and support us each month. We appreciate hearing from you and receiving your feedback. Until next month, happy CoCoing and retro forever.
It's a blast from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo. 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 CoCo.
Dance like there's no tomorrow.
What is this crazy rock and roll music anyway?
It's a blast from the past.
Dance, dance, dance.
CoCo. CoCo.